to LaGrange Road. I kept watching it today, 'cause I go that way a lot, and I'm like, boy, so this is yes. Well, traffic that way by LaGrange and Ogden and Wolf and Ogden in the mornings is really taking my wife to work. It's amazing how bad Wolf Road is from Ogden to 31st.
Big white
Why is Wolf
headband.
back there?
That's great.
A lot of traffic.
Flying out behind.
How was the team circle first?
Where do you go to?
It's hard to,
Yeah.
they moved up a division for cross-country after they won a couple years ago. So it's a lot tougher. They get just trounced by the guys every single night.
Really?
Oh, for sure. They've got some, we've got some girls and they still get PRs.
That's good.
That's,
Your son in top seven, or is he nowhere?
he's in top seven.
I enjoyed it. It's on my shoulder. I was really sure. There's one thing I can tell myself. If I could go back in time, I'd need to enjoy it all the time. I know it's hard to go to school and go to practice. I realized that going to work is a fun school. And be able to go to a health club and jump on the treadmill for a little bit. That's like your reward for it. So if you can look back at your time in high school, this is actually a reward. I tried forcing me to go work and hang out with
Okay, Stevie, are we ready to go? Okay, thank you.
the highly encouraged.
All right, if the board members could please make sure you have your microphones on. We want to get going here. Okay, good evening. It's 7:10 PM on Monday, September 22nd, 2025. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the whole meeting. Mike, we have a roll call for the committee, please.
Trustee Ketchmark.
Here.
Trustee Whitehead.
Here.
Trustee Hendricks.
Here.
Trustee Naramatsu.
Here.
Trustee Gilhooly.
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Here.
President Garvey.
Here. Thank you. The first item we have is a discussion and presentation by Civiltech Engineering for Ogden Avenue corridor improvements and Energize Ogden Project Phase 1. I want to get right into the staff did a very detailed memo talking about the history behind this, but this is a specific step and presentation tonight that we want to go through. I'm going to turn it over to Tim to do a few introductory remarks, and then Derek is going to kind of lead us through the discussion. And there's four main areas of discussion tonight, different topics. And what I'd like to do, just to give the board a heads up once Derek gets into his presentations, the four various topics, which being the side street intersections, then the signalized intersection corners, sidewalk width, and non-compliant parking solutions. I'd like to have Derek make a presentation on each of those, open it up to board questions or comments initially on each of those topics after each individual topic. And at the end, we can come back, and then I'll open it up to public comment. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. You can jump in at the end of each topic and talk about that particular topic. And of course, at any time, you can come back with more. But that was just my plan for going through the presentation this evening. So, Tim?
Thank you, President Garvey. It was ironic that we talked about construction in Ogden, and you correctly stated and clarified what I said. Our goal is not to keep people off of Ogden Avenue. Maybe for the next few weeks, it's going to be a little challenging, but our goal is to create an Ogden Avenue that everyone wants to be on and enjoys. My purpose of tonight is I'm just going to summarize the process to date, turn it over to Derek. He's got some comments to make as well, and then we'll turn it over to Civiltech. So this is really well, it's not really the culmination because we're not done, and we're not looking for any approval tonight. Tonight is kind of a status report. We are going to present, and Civiltech is going to present the results of a lot of hard work and a lot of hours and analysis has gone into Ogden Avenue, which actually started in 2021. We came to the village board. We had several discussions, staff and the board, with let's develop a plan and a strategy to try to improve the corridor of Ogden Avenue, to make it serve as a catalyst and as a amenity that the community wants and enjoys. So the board accepted that recommendation and entrusted that recommendation and said, let's start a planning process. We followed an RFP process, a competitive process that resulted in the board awarding a contract to Kimley Horn, is a planning consulting firm, and they worked to develop the planning report, which we then labeled as Energize Ogden. We had several meetings about that plan, and this village board, the village board at the time, adopted that plan in June of 2022. Following adoption of that plan, it was now time to actually work to try to implement the plan. And so we also undertook a competitive RFP process to find a contractor that would perform phases 1 and 2 of planning work that would actually implement the scope and scale and the goals of the Energize Ogden plan. Civiltech was the chosen consultant for that process, and they are here tonight, and in a few minutes, they're gonna present their report and their status of where they think we are. Their goal was well, not quite simple, but was very spelled out in 2 documents mainly. It's the Energize Ogden plan that Kimley Horn did, and they also reviewed the comprehensive plan, which spoke of several goals and desires for what the community wanted to see on the Ogden, in the Ogden corridor. In a broad sense, these documents really had one general goal or 2 general goals in place. And that was to implement a corridor that would provide for safer vehicular and pedestrian access to the corridor. I'm gonna read just some of the highlights of some of the goals that were included in the Energize Ogden plan that has formed kind of the basis and the background for everything that we've been working on. First of all was to serve as, the plan wants Ogden Avenue to serve as an attractive gateway into the village, not only drawing in, but welcoming visitors to Brookfield. Second, the plan wants Ogden to differentiate in Brookfield the fact that you're in Brookfield and that you're not coming from the east in Lyons or going west into LaGrange, but wanted to create a place, a sense of place that you're in Brookfield. Next, I want to make sure we're supporting existing and local businesses and promoting an attractive corridor with well-maintained properties, facades, and signage. Next, to encourage redevelopment of vacant and underutilized sites and introduce additional restaurant uses, retail uses, entertainment uses, and ideally with these uses having above them residential uses. One of the key goals is to allow for the safer and more comfortable pedestrian circulation, which I don't think is really the case. I think you all agree that's not really the case right now. Next, we wanted to encourage and create opportunities for bicyclists to safely get through the corridor, access the corridor, and visit the corridor, and provide locations for the bicyclists of our community to park them at businesses. And we wanted to make sure and improve the vehicular safety and operations in the corridor, while at the same time maintaining and providing environmental and sustainable practices, including better walkability, multimodal infrastructure to support that, increasing and improving the tree canopy along the corridor, and new LED street lighting that will meet the dark skies criteria that's included in many environmental reports. To help in this regard, a subcommittee was created consisting of Trustee Ketchmark, former Trustee Ed Cote, more recently Trustee Kyle Whitehead, Derek Treichel, Village Engineer, Lauren Moore, our Public Works Director, Libby Popovich, our Community Development Director, and myself have been meeting regularly with Civiltech on a monthly basis to go through their recommendations, to argue and debate over various recommendations, to arm wrestle over things. And the document that you're going to see and the report you're going to see tonight is really the results of that iterative process. I want to stress that the focus of everything that you're going to hear tonight is not a short-term process. We're not talking about how can we improve Ogden for next year or 2 years. It's really a 30 to 40-year focus. And so I will say that the committee and Civiltech have, I think, done a very good job of focusing on, obviously it's impossible to know the needs of what will look like in the year 2070, but we think we have a pretty good idea of what works now and what doesn't work now, and this plan is really trying to address what we can do to improve this corridor for the next generation. I want to stress that none of the improvements, if all of these improvements were approved tonight, and again, that's not the purpose of tonight's agenda, it is most likely, and perhaps Derek and Civiltech will talk about this, it's likely that these improvements will not be actually constructed until 2029. So we're not here looking for direction, we're not here to recognize things that will be done anytime in the next couple of years. Notices have been sent to all property owners on Ogden, both sides of the street, a couple weeks ago, informing them of this meeting tonight. They were invited to this meeting. They were also invited to watch online, watch live. All these documents will be available and have been available on our website, and so if they're not here tonight, they can always access this information online. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Derek, and he's going to further discuss the process today.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Just quickly, Stevie, can we flip to the next slide? Do you have control? Oh, Tim does, thank you. Just a quick review of the agenda. Tim and I will give a quick project overview. Then we'll go into recommendations from the design committee on, there's really 4 issues we're here to talk to the board about, and Tim touched on them. We have the side street intersection improvements, improvements to signalized intersections. We're gonna talk about the sidewalk widths, where we have some narrow sidewalk widths and some solutions there. And then we wanna talk about non-compliant parking solutions. Because they're so distinct, as President Garvey mentioned, after each one, I'd like to pause and just get feedback or questions and input from the board. Then we'll move on after that to the next subject. At the end, we have time for questions and discussion on the entire presentation. And when we wrap that up, we can finish up with just next steps on this project. So goals for tonight, again, a little redundant, but we have those 4 items. We're looking for board concurrence if possible. And the reason we need that is the next steps for Civiltech are gonna be to go ahead and finish up the phase 1 project development report that they're working on and submit a draft to IDOT and get comments. We wanna make sure that they're taking the same approach that the board has, the same design approach. So a little background, we haven't talked to you in about a year on this, but the project includes studying the improvements on Ogden Avenue from Everly Avenue to Custer. That's the entire length of Ogden through Brookfield. It's approximately 1 mile long. We note that Ogden Avenue is an IDOT right-of-way. That and the fact that we're using federal funding means IDOT's gonna have to review and approve all of these improvements. And it does include coordination with the village of LaGrange. The west half of Everly Avenue intersection is within the LaGrange village limits. It's also gonna include coordination with the village of Lyons, as the east half of Custer Avenue is in Lyons. Just a high-level overview of the scope of work. We're gonna replace all of the curb and gutter. Right now, there's a lot of roll curb out there. The proposed curb will be a barrier-type curb, 6-inch head of curb, and it'll have defined driveway openings. We're gonna replace all of the sidewalk. Typically, right now, we have about a 10 to 11-foot sidewalk up and down the corridor on both sides. All of that sidewalk will be replaced. There will be streetscape elements included. Nothing on this list is final, but what's being contemplated now is a strip of brick pavers at the back of curb, some benches, planters, and trees. Of course, it'll include resurfacing the pavement, and we will also study the need for a storm sewer. LaGrange actually has a large storm sewer, 78-inch storm sewer in Ogden right now. Carries mostly their flows. We're studying the need whether it'd be beneficial to include a separate large storm sewer for Brookfield storm flows on Ogden, and it would have a separate outlet into Salt Creek. We'll meet with Public Works and we'll discuss the condition of the water mains on Ogden Avenue and replace any water mains that are in a deteriorated condition or that need to be replaced before we put concrete improvements over them. And there'll also be corridor lighting. It'll certainly be roadway lighting, and it may also include pedestrian level lighting. Just a quick project schedule. Tim touched on this, but right now we're in the preliminary environmental and design study. That's also known as the Phase 1 engineering you're familiar with when we come with our other federal projects like Burlington and the Brookfield and Grand project. So this is the preparation of the Phase 1 project development report. As part of that, there were a couple of business owners focus group meetings held in September and October of 2023 to get some stakeholder input. There was also initial public information meeting held in March of 2024, and we anticipate a final public information meeting probably in the summer of 2026. That would be to present the final agreed to improvements to the constituents. The second phase of this, that's the Phase 1 engineering. The second phase, Phase 2 engineering, is detailed design engineering and contract plan preparation. That won't begin until the Phase 1 report has been approved by IDOT. After that, we go into preparation of contract plans and specifications, and also during Phase 2 engineering, right-of-way acquisition will be performed. We anticipate that'll start in 2027. There is funding scheduled, planned from the West Cook Transportation Council, and it can go as late as 2029. And then construction is 2029 at the earliest. I want to point out, while we do have the funding for Phase 1 that's going on now and Phase 2 engineering, which will go on starting in 27, we don't have construction funding now. It's about a $25 to $30 million project, probably the biggest project Brookfield has or maybe even will undertake. You'll start applying for funding during the design phase for that. We anticipate multiple grants. There'll be the SDP fund, probably ITEP project will try and get some money. There might be 2 or 3 other. We don't anticipate one grant covering the full amount, but the goal is going to be to get 80% federal funding for this project. Wanted to touch base on something. I think this, we all know this, but I want to provide a little data. So two of the large design challenges are the high traffic volume on Ogden. It's our highest traffic volume street in the village. It has a ADT, average daily traffic, of about 25,700 vehicles. Just quickly, in comparison to Grand Boulevard, which is a collector route, it has 3,200 vehicles per day. So that's about 12% of Ogden. And LaGrange Road through downtown LaGrange has about 19,300 as an ADT. So they have 75% of the traffic we have on Ogden. Ogden is a major arterial for this whole area, a lot of traffic. One of the issues we're facing is it only has a 66-foot right-of-way. We all know it's crowded. We all know the traffic feels like it's on top of us. We have some answers to try to improve that, some design solutions, but a 66-foot right-of-way is about the same width as it is the same width as our typical residential street. It's just, it was a poorly planned right-of-way on Ogden. I listed a couple streets just to put it in perspective. Grand Boulevard with that almost 10% of the ADT has an 80-foot right-of-way, 21% wider than Ogden. And then LaGrange Road down in downtown LaGrange has a 100-foot right-of-way, so they're 52% wider. So when we look at LaGrange Road and we see that nice parallel parking and the 15-foot sidewalk, it's just a much different corridor than we have in Ogden. And yet, we have some ideas to try to improve things out there and make it a safer and more inviting pedestrian experience. The next 2 slides, Tim actually touched on this. I just wanted to tie this in, as this isn't a study with this design committee over the last 6 months. The Energize Ogden, I pointed out a few items in here. They identified allow for safe and comfortable pedestrian circulation. They understand that's not out there now. They want vehicular operations and safety of the corridor. including enhanced walkability. I mean, when we go to the constituents, it's a very consistent message. They identified that current access configuration creates multiple vehicle conflict points and impacts pedestrian safety and comfort. So again, this has been identified when we did the more broad study on Energize Ogden. And then even on our comprehensive plan, it included with the pedestrian and bicycle improvements, it said focus on enhancing the safety and comfort of the multimodal network in order to expand transportation choices and options for residents of all ages. And when they talk about access management, it identified Ogden Avenue and says in particular, it combines high-speed travel, excessive curb cuts, resulting in dangerous ingress and egress conditions. Their recommendation was to consolidate curb cuts. This isn't new is all I'm trying to point out. We've had several groups get together, talk about Ogden Avenue, what hinders us from having a better business community out there, making it more walkability, and it's the same thing that we hear time and time again. We did also have a public information meeting last spring, again, just hitting on more comments, but a desire for more pedestrian and bike accommodations, improved safety at existing facilities. They identified the cars parking on the sidewalk create unsafe and unwelcoming feeling for pedestrians. Talked about the cars on the sidewalk blocking the sight line when you're on a side street trying to make a turn onto Ogden. I won't go through all the others. I think you get my point. The issues out there are identified by many and all, and we want to go ahead and make these improvements, and we've got some solutions to present. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jim. Are you going to talk? Jim is with Civiltech, and Emma is also with Civiltech. She's here to support.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight.
It's on.
All right, thank you. So this goes along with what Derek was saying, you know, with our project goals, obviously, we want to resurface the pavement, reconstruct the sidewalks and incorporate some of the streetscape elements, maybe introduce some trees if we can, brick pavers, some street furniture, anything like that to make it more welcoming for pedestrians. Also looking at the signals, the equipment out there is aging. We want to replace those so it's modernized with the latest technology, APS as well. And then take a look at the aging utility equipment that's out there as well. And we really want to have an emphasis on public safety and increasing the safe use of the public right-of-way. So we are looking at the design at each intersection of which vehicles are using it and which vehicles we should be designing each of these intersections for. We want to improve the pedestrian accommodations so that anyone of any ability is able to use the corridor, looking at the ADA accessibility of all the side streets as well. We are going to be incorporating that active transportation plan where we can. And then we want to encourage parking that is compliant with the village code. Again, just touching on the four issues we're going to be discussing tonight: the wide side street crosswalks, the tight corners at the signalized intersections, the narrow sidewalks, and then the non-compliant parking. Non-compliant parking is, there's a couple different instances, different types of non-compliant parking. So that's all within, some of it's within the public right-of-way, maybe on the sidewalk, maybe overhanging the sidewalk or overhanging the public right-of-way. This also includes vehicles that are required to back out, cross over the public right-of-way, and onto Ogden Avenue, a very unsafe maneuver. So the first issue that we're going to discuss here is the side street crosswalks. Shown on this image is Dale Avenue, just south of Ogden. You can see there's really long crosswalk. There's no pedestrian space on those corners, and you just have this really wide pavement. Our side street recommendation is to improve them, very similar to what is done on Elm Street on the south end here as well. You want to narrow the opening, really have a shorter pedestrian exposure, shorter crosswalk, so they're on the street less time. This gives us more opportunity for some green space or some pedestrian streetscaping out there. And depending on the full design of these intersections, we may be coming back to get a village ordinance to restrict some of the truck turning movements. And this would be essentially restricting some of the large semis, or, you know, the largest trucks that aren't using the street, just having it signposted that they can't access the street to or from. And I think, yeah, we can discuss this one. Is that what we're gonna do, Derek?
Yeah, so the first 2 or 3 of these are actually kind of brief, but we did want to see if, rather than going through the whole thing and we forget about what our questions or ideas, is there any input on the side street, the non-signalized side street improvements, taking this approach similar to what we show on the screen now?
My question is, would the goal be to do this on every side street in that whole corridor where it doesn't exist? Or there are particular ones that are most egregious or like
Yeah,
have the
we are
longest
looking at
distance?
all the side streets.
Right. And part of the, can you flip back? So we've improved Elm, whatever that was there, and this is Dale. We've just not improved that, but if we were to improve it, even with our street program, we would put in improvements similar to Elm. It's a better layout. It allows for the protected angle parking is the other thing that it does.
So right now it's getting done when the side street is getting improved.
We've done that in the past with our street programs, and I would imagine if we have another one that bumps up to Ogden, we would do it. But the plan is if we don't get to these by the time Ogden is done, that it would be done as part of the Ogden
Got it.
project. So there could be, depending which streets we improve, between now and say 2029 or 30, when Ogden starts, we could do some as part of our street road program.
Yeah, and we're including those in our study, so they are eligible for federal funding.
Any board members have concerns about that plan for the side street intersections going forward?
Would that also, sorry, I have another one.
No.
Would that also include adding diagonal parking on streets where there isn't?
Yes, and we're gonna discuss some of that later on with the parking
Okay.
improvements,
Right.
yeah.
So this is just
It's-
regarding the bump out piece?
Right, and a bit of a win for Brookfield, you know, we're typically restricted with this federal money within the Ogden right-of-way. And with the design team, the discussion was, let's get as much of this angle parking improvements up to the alley. Again, assuming we're gonna get the 80% funding, that's the win for us. So, yes, the answer, we'll try to improve all of those streets that don't have that layout now.
Yeah, I appreciate this approach with the side streets. Speaking as our family lives south of Ogden, I know a few other board members do. I think it is such a barrier for safe travel of all types across the community. And, you know, this very quickly on these side streets becomes a residential neighborhood, right? So you have this extremely busy road, and you have maybe one business, a few parking spots, and then just strips of homes and kids out there on their bikes and scooters. And I know, you know, when I'm out there with my family, I don't want my kid to get within a block of Ogden for this reason, but there's homes on that block. So if I lived on that block, that wouldn't be an option for me. So limiting the traffic, you know, we don't need high-speed semi-trucks going down these blocks, right? There are other options for them to get through. So just thinking about the residents who live immediately around this corridor, and even the residents who live a few blocks further south, and I know Clerk Melendez, Trustee Naramatsu, you're in the same boat. So I appreciate the approach that the team is taking here, and it would be a huge improvement.
Can I ask a question? I remember at some point there was discussion of pedestrian oases in the middle. Is that part of this project, or is that something that was contemplated?
It's not part of tonight's discussion. We discussed that. I was looking at the agenda from a year ago.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, are we approaching IDOT to get comments from them on the refuge islands?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so we were gonna get comments and then come back to the board. I think there was interest from the board, is my recollection. It had some right-of-way impacts, and we're gonna get IDOT comments to ensure there aren't additional right-of-way impacts before we come back to you for that.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be really helpful to try to cross in those, in between the signalized intersections for pedestrians. Thanks.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Oh, I think this is great.
So
These aerial
consensus.
shots are very helpful. I mean, when you're standing, you see, but to get the aerial shots to see the before and after about how wide, how long of a crosswalk it is and how challenging it can be. You know, we've done bump outs in other areas that have made things more pedestrian friendly, but, you know, trying to cross some of these streets quickly when there's traffic coming down Ogden Avenue, maybe make a quick turn, this shortens the path and the bump outs. So to have this visual and then, you know, the ones we've already done to see how the bump outs and obviously, I know we're not talking about increased angle parking here, but it kind of relates to the last topic later on, how it could come into play where we're going to have to find possibly more parking, but this allows us to do that also, so.
I'll be curious also to hear about the oases, especially considering how narrow Ogden is compared to some of the other larger roads that have those, that
Sure.
I've seen at least. I don't know if that would impact that.
And just to be
Decision.
clear, so the takeaway from the last meeting we were here about a year ago, was to go ahead with those and submit those to IDOT. We're fleshing out some additional issues here, but, so we will include those in the draft plan. We'll get the comments, and then we'll come back to the board after we receive comments. So that, thank you for the comment and the reminder, but
Got it.
that, to be clear, that's the intent. And then if I could, what I'm hearing is a consensus on this side street, approach,
Yes.
design approach. So, thank you, Jim.
All right, so the next issue to discuss is the signalized intersections. These intersections have been designed a long time ago, no different than any of the other side streets. So we have really tight corners. Different size trucks are using these. The signalized intersections are seeing higher traffic compared to the side streets. So that's usually where the trucks are gonna be. And at each intersection, it's different size trucks are using it. So we wanna make sure that we are designing to the vehicles that are using it, not what we are required by the design manuals from IDOT that they want us to be designing for. And then a lot of these trucks are overtopping the sidewalk, going onto the sidewalk, and even beyond the sidewalk. As you can see in this image here, this is at East and Everly, at Ogden, at the southeast corner. There's just records of overtopping of the curb, and I'm gonna flip through a bunch of pictures here, but before I do, just kinda wanna give a highlight of what different size trucks are out there and the different lanes we have. So on top is a passenger car, you know, this dimension showing 19 feet, that's anywhere, right around 20 feet. Delivery trucks, 30 to 40 feet, a school bus is gonna be 40 feet. Emergency vehicle fire truck, that's at 42 feet, and that's gonna be the bare minimum that IDOT's gonna require, like you have to allow a fire truck access. Then we get into the larger semis, 50, 55, 65 feet. For a roadway like Ogden, if it was to be designed brand new, they would wanna accommodate the 65-foot wheelbase trucks on all streets, all turns, all corners. Right now, that truck can barely make it through Ogden as it is. So we do not want to approach our design looking for that. We want to figure out which cars and trucks are using each of these turns and make it more customized approach. So here's some images from East and Everly. We're on the southeast corner looking northwest. These were all pulled from one day, just a couple hours, and pulled really quickly. We didn't have to search through the camera for any of these. So here's a garbage truck. You can see he's going up on the curb. Here's a dump truck again, getting up onto the sidewalk a little bit. Here's a large semi. You can tell he's using both lanes going northbound and also turning into the turn lane on Ogden. So he is taking up a lot of space. And
How long is that truck? I mean, that one approximately, that'd be, what, is that like a 60, is that one of the?
it's probably either 55 or 65.
65,
Yeah.
okay.
So he's, and then he goes up onto the, onto the sidewalk as well. So, you know, like we were discussing at the other, there's little space on the corners as it is for the pedestrians. I would not want to be standing on the corner when he's making that turn. You know, you're definitely backing up. Here's an eastbound truck, similarly, making that turn. And he's probably, it's hard to tell, probably going up on the sidewalk as well. Just another instance of the truck using all of the sidewalk. So this is the, some of the conditions that you may not be seeing out there, but we are capturing.
I'm just glad you didn't capture my car.
And these trucks, when they're making these tight turns, they are going slow. They do have to make sure that that turn lane on the far side is clear so they can encroach onto those turn lanes. So they are also, delaying some traffic as they do this. So our approach for each of these intersections are a little bit different. And shown in your packet with these exhibits are the, the turning movement envelope, basically the amount of space a truck's gonna take when they make these turns. In general, with most of the corners, we're seeing delivery trucks or school buses make these turns. There's some other intersections that have the larger vehicles. And at this intersection in particular, the southeast corner, we are trying to minimize some of the impacts to that car wash and not impact their operation. So on that southeast corner, we're showing the 50-foot wheelbase semi as our design vehicle. And you can see on the corner, we are bumping out the pavement by about 13 feet and having a wider sidewalk there as well. The southwest corner would be a wheelbase 55-foot semi as well. That's a big, heavy movement for trucks going from Ogden south. Over at Du Bois, this one, we want to accommodate the delivery trucks, a 40-foot single unit truck on all corners. This would require pavement widening about 5 to 10 feet on some of the corners. Over at Maple, one thing I do want to point out at this intersection, and it's present at some of the other intersections on this exhibit, maybe hard to see, in the packet it's there as well. The blue line is the public right-of-way, and that is extending into the roadway right now. So on all of these corners, the sidewalks are actually on the private property. So we want to clean up the right-of-way, make sure that the public facility is within the public right-of-way. And by doing that, we also are looking at the vehicles here. So, we are looking at the 40-foot delivery trucks on all corners except for the southwest. We have the building nearby, so we don't want to impact the building. So we are reducing that to a 30-foot delivery truck. Over at Prairie, this intersection is a little bit different since it is split phased. The north leg and south leg have their own green time and operate separately. So the trucks have a little bit more space. They can kind of take up the whole intersection to turn through. So we have on that southeast right turn a 55-foot wheelbase just because he can go into the oncoming traffic as it is. The other intersection, other corners here would be the 40-foot delivery trucks. And then finally over at Custer, we would be designing for delivery trucks on 3 of the 4 corners. And that southwest corner, we would maintain the existing curb line, just because that building's on the corner and we can't widen it without essentially tearing down the building. So the design vehicle on that corner would be a passenger car.
So I was going to jump in because each of those intersections is a little bit different. Maybe we just go backwards, Custer to, or
Sure.
whoever you want to start at East End. We can start at the west end and go east, since you moved the slides, which is fine. But I think each one of these it'd be helpful if boards want to weigh in on each of these or as questions. So first talking about the East Avenue and Eberly issue and design, questions, comments, input there?
If I could offer a quick summary of what the intent was, particularly on that southeast corner. So there is some property acquisition on the corner of the car wash, okay? The reason you're seeing a WB50, WB's wheelbase, as opposed to the 55 is because when we went to a 55, we then impacted that building, okay? When we're on these signalized intersections, IDOT requires that turning movement happen without encroaching into what would be the westbound traffic, okay? in reality, if you have a larger truck, they will likely do what happens now. Wait till that turn lane. They're not gonna necessarily overtop the curb. They can wait to the turn lane and then make the right turn there. So I'm talking about northbound traffic going to eastbound. The approach we took is to widen these to what I would call the maximum extent practicable. In other words, we're taking property, we understand that has to happen, but we're trying not to impact existing buildings. There is a choice, if the board was willing to impact those buildings, you can put in a wider radius, but that was the approach, particularly on that southeast corner here.
There is a sign there, right? There's impact to the signage,
There's an
because the
impact
car
to the-
wash has a sign right there, so.
Right. And let's talk, it's a great example so the board understands the impact. So we'll have to take some of his property, would now be right away. The sign removal and relocation would be part of the project, federally funded. I mean, he's not stuck with those costs on his own. Neither is the village stuck with it. We're looking for the 80-20 funding. So that would be part of this project. So the right-of-way acquisition during design, the sign relocation during construction.
And are these, all or nothing recommendations on, because I mean, for instance, do we have input with this project on the LaGrange corner, the southwest corner? What happens there?
That's between Brookfield and LaGrange. The idea is we wanted to come and get Brookfield's input so we know what we can say to LaGrange. We have talked to them about this corner already preliminarily, but once we understand what we're doing on our side of the street, we'll go over and talk to them. The northwest and northeast corner are really not an issue. We're designing those for 40-foot trucks. They don't get the heavy semis. They did express some concern about their sign. I had mentioned to them this.
They being LaGrange business or Brookfield?
LaGrange,
Okay.
village manager and public works directors who we met with about a year ago. It's been a bit. And we know we have the signal knockdowns. These curbs will stay like this for 50-plus years. So I would encourage everyone to take that long-term view of this, that I know there's some pain involved when we take the private property, but this intersection certainly needs to be improved. We could debate how much, but.
And not to get too far in, but if LaGrange didn't consent or go along with the southwest corner and we made changes to the southeast corner, is that a scenario or?
Yeah, yes, if we would have to get concurrence from LaGrange on our design. So if we're getting a lot of pushback for them, we could, in theory, change our design to.
Okay, and I'd like to think that they would, in the spirit of cooperation in the long term, and, I mean, we know those lights, signals get hit all the time and stuff. I know none of us are taking this lightly, that's major changes, and, removing signage and right-of-way and things is important, but I was just curious as to how that works, because I know it's not an issue for the north side at all, basically, with Everly and Ogden on the northwest corner, but I was just curious, the process.
Just to clarify the question, because I'm not sure I understand the answer. If the village of Brookfield wanted to improve the southeast corner and LaGrange did not want to do the southwest, can we still do the southeast corner?
That's potential. East Avenue is a Cook County route. So ultimately, design decisions are going to be up to IDOT and Cook County. However, having support of the village board and everyone else here, we can approach them for the variance for the lesser design.
And I'm not sure how the discussion goes with IDOT and Cook County. I don't think they necessarily limit us from improving our corner, just how they react if LaGrange wanted to stay at a radius that would only accommodate a 40-foot delivery vehicle.
Sure.
But again, we would come back to the board, let you know one way or another, but certainly we'd have to have more discussions on our side if they limited us, but I don't know that they would. I don't know why they would limit us from putting in a proper radius if LaGrange chose not to expand their radius.
Does LaGrange concurrence, but also LaGrange funding, 80-20, or are we responsible then for this corner as well?
Typically to cost share, any work done
Cost share.
within their village, yes, they'd be
Okay.
responsible for their local share of the cost, yes. Same with Lions, of course.
All right, so any other board input? I mean, we're looking for a consensus on intersection, basically intersection by intersection right now on
Yes.
this. Dealing with this, does anyone have any questions about the proposed action steps here, and is there a consensus, or?
Do the business owners have, so you met with some of the business owners and they've seen these plans, or they haven't seen these plans?
They have not. We'd like to get board input first. I will say, again, good question. The intent when you're taking a significant, any amount of property, but particularly this where it's a significant amount, is to go meet with these business owners individually, talk about options, explain the process to them. You know, they do get their property purchased, it's appraised, purchased, and then we can talk about how it impacts. Like, for instance, I don't know that if the amount of property we're taking on the car wash impacts their vehicle flow. I need to talk to them, but it certainly impacts their sign. My thought, if we could just push it back 5 to 10 feet, it might still be okay. But we need to have that discussion with them individually.
I mean, I think it makes sense to try to make that intersection as safe as possible. So, I don't know, I guess I'm in favor of having those conversations with the business owners and trying to get a meeting of the minds there.
It's difficult. We all saw the picture. I think we've seen it. We know they hit the traffic signal, but I mean, that truck was up, not just over the curb, it was at the back of sidewalk. It's almost traveling on private property. I'm not saying that's every truck, but as Jim was pointing out, we didn't comb, this came from the police department, and this was all within one day. You know, they sent it over very quickly and said, yeah, here's a few pictures. So we didn't comb months of pictures to find just the worst picture. This is one day occurrence. I would guess it's an everyday occurrence.
One more question. So when you say you're designing the corners or the intersections for a certain length of trucks, is that just from your study of those intersections and what you're seeing? Okay.
Yeah, we did some traffic counts out there, which collected the classification of the trucks. So a lot of semis, delivery trucks, or passenger cars, as well as pedestrians.
Okay, thanks.
And we're designing for these, like, I'm looking at a 50-foot semi-truck on the southeast corner, right? But we can't really say you can't now have a 65-foot semi-truck there, right? I mean, those things are still going to happen, we're just not able to design for them,
Yes,
is that
correct.
correct?
Yeah, so IDOT's approach to these intersections is, you have your design vehicle, and then you have a control vehicle, which basically means you can access the entire pavement width to make that turn. So we're not restricting this, the 65-foot wheelbase semis from making that turn. They're just gonna have to encroach on oncoming traffic.
Thank you, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes. But going back to the side streets that we discussed, the 65-foot wheelbase semis would physically not be able to turn onto those side streets. And that's where we would need a village ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Other, again, just looking for a consensus
Looks
for the
great to
plan,
me.
for the intersection, so.
Yeah.
The clear consensus from the board that they support the plan for this particular intersection?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll move on to Du Bois. Again, questions, comments from the board, concerns?
And this isn't impacting buildings either, it's just, but it would take some private property.
Yeah, so a little bit of corner clips on the sides for some signal equipment, wider sidewalks. The pavement's getting bumped out maybe 5 feet, 10 feet on the northeast corner. So really minor widening in these corners.
Everyone okay with the design for Du Bois?
Yes.
And so the edge of the street, the edge of the curb into that blue line is you said the village-owned portion? Is it that kind of royal blue?
Yeah,
Is
the
that the-
royal blue is the is the public right-of-way.
The public right-of-way.
Yes, and then there's a lighter blue, it may be hard to see, showing
I
the
see.
current edge of pavement. So we dimensioned how wide we'd be widening on each corner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think there's a clear consensus from the board on Du Bois. Moving on to Maple then. Questions, comments, concerns from the board about Maple?
Nope, that makes sense.
Just reiterate what Jim said, right now, some of the sidewalk, some of the roadway is actually on private property, just because the right-of-way is not, when they improved this intersection at some time, 30 to 50 years ago, they built on what is actually private property. So part of our property taking on here, just to clean up what's out there now, and then we are taking some for intersection improvements out here.
So will you note where there's, like, may impact one parking space, for instance, on the northwest corner? I mean, is that because of the way the radius is needed? So, I mean,
And that kind of coincides with the wider sidewalk too, where, I think, yeah, that was, with widening the sidewalk, there may be some impacts.
It would impact a parking space in the business's parking lot?
Potentially, if we, if we go to the full 10-foot width there.
if you could see that corner right there by, it's the Dunkin' Donuts and the Taco Estaca. So by widening the sidewalk to the appropriate level to have a traveling sidewalk, it might, if you could picture that last
Yes.
space there in the
Corner of the parking lot.
corner of the parking lot.
Jumping ahead here, is that one of the locations of the narrow sidewalk that we're trying to
Yeah,
expand?
that would be
Oh,
likely
yeah.
one of the locations where we would not go after the 10-foot wide sidewalk. We'd go a little bit narrower to maintain that parking space.
Any other concerns about that intersection? Or again, I'm just,
Well, I guess I have a question about that, because that seems like a place where people are trying to cross with bikes and people, so would it be I mean, I would argue like, maybe we do have one less parking space if it's gonna make that intersection safer?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. That's a pretty big crossing area for a lot of people going there. That's a hot spot.
Yeah.
It's
plus
not very
the-
much space to stand on right now.
I was there this
Or-
morning,
right,
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's,
but I don't know how much bigger,
Certainly
would be-
valid, and we can prepare we don't have an exhibit for tonight showing the 10-foot walk, or do we?
We can confirm that.
Yeah, we'll
I guess
prepare
what
the
you're hearing is the
exhibit.
board is open to considering the, fact that to make the
Right.
sidewalk wider, that there's a parking space impacted or there's more. I mean, it is, I think, just familiarity with the intersections and how they use it. It's a pathway to many things, pedestrian pathway, people going to Ellert Park and other things, so, and we encourage crossing there because there's no other crossing all the way from Maple to signalized until Du Bois, and children crossing for schools and other things use that intersection, so.
I've watched the whole cross-country teams try and stand there and wait for the light.
Right, it's terrible.
in the Dunkin'.
Can I ask about the driveway there? Is that something we have control? I know it's probably, it belongs to them, but it is a traffic.
The Dunkin' Donuts
yes.
driveway, right, with the
Right, on that
median in it?
end,
Yeah,
right
to
there.
where
Double
the-
curb.
It is a mess.
Well, people trying to turn left into that part of the lot.
Yeah.
I want to think about, I know the issue you're saying, and it was approved when they developed that.
Yeah,
They didn't have
I'm
any
sure.
other option with that. I understand the concern. I think it was actually addressed. I'm not sure that's
Yeah.
this project, but that,
If
I
there's other-
understand the concern.
I mean, if you're concerned, I mean, people turning as they're going northbound on Maple, making a left turn to try and go there, maybe that can be dealt with through traffic ordinances or control that way, but.
But it seems when that was originally approved, there was the do not enter sign on that. So it was only meant to be, you could turn,
Going southbound.
right,
Yeah.
and then somewhere along the line that do not enter.
I think it's more too that because there's then backups kind of in and out, that there's cars probably crossing the sidewalk there when they shouldn't be, because they're like inching out into traffic, and the same going in when you're waiting in line to get into the drive-through, that it just creates even more of a sidewalk backup if there are people trying to cross.
And it's so close to the corner.
Right.
Yep.
That's part, I mean, but it was approved and that's the design. So I think what Derek's saying, that there's probably not much as this project that relates to that.
I've
but-
got to know, well, I'll talk to staff. I think that's a code enforcement type, I'm not sure that's even the right phrase, but I think I'm not sure this is part of the Ogden project. If that's a problem and there's some accidents or observed,
The Traffic Safety Committee maybe
yeah.
can look at it, so, okay, but it's a good point bringing it up. But other than that, is there a consensus to support the Maple Avenue signalized intersection design?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
on to Prairie then?
And then over at Prairie, very similar. Not much change, some 5 to 6 foot widening of the southwest, northeast corners.
what vehicle are we accommodating there, Jim?
40-foot delivery on all except the southeast, which has additional pavement to use, and that'd be at the 55-foot wheelbase.
Right. Again, that seems to me what primarily utilizes Prairie is the delivery, 40-foot delivery vehicles.
Signaling isn't a part of this conversation, right? Because I think at one point we were talking about the signaling of the left turn lanes, or the left turn going southbound on Prairie from Ogden. That was maybe a whole other conversation that had nothing to do with Energize Ogden.
Yeah,
Don't
it's not,
recall.
we can hit that. I don't know. What was the discussion
We-
on the, so southbound on Prairie?
When you're coming westbound on Ogden and people are trying to turn left on the Prairie to go south, we talked about
We're gonna be.
prohibiting left turn lane,
Yes.
left turns.
Yes,
Yes,
that's,
we're gonna be citing the left turns for westbound traffic.
right.
Great.
Right, I think
Thank
that's
you.
out there, not theoretically, we just don't have the signage, if I remember right. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like there's no turn, yes.
There's no turn lane there,
There's no turn lane,
but.
but there's no left turn.
Right.
Right, we
Sign,
need some
so,
signage,
yeah.
yes. And that would be part of this project, that's the intent right now.
But don't we have counts, don't we, of how many, there are cars making that movement?
It's very.
Oh, yeah,
low.
yeah, yeah, they're
It's
definitely.
very low? I
yeah.
thought it was,
So wait, you're saying in order to get signage there for the no left turn, we have to wait for this project? Is that not something we
I
can
stay with
do
that.
from a safety perspective?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that sounds like a long way off if it's currently not allowed, but we just don't have
If the
signage.
traffic safety committee might make a recommendation, we could approach IDOT. We might be able, I'm not sure. We could certainly approach IDOT. Let me approach the traffic, Mike and Terry and the traffic safety committee and see if we can do something prior to this
Okay.
project.
I
But
don't
it's,
know what
it's more
the-
than just signage. I mean, the turn is allowed now. There's just no lane.
Oh, it is allowed now.
It is
I thought
allowed.
you- I thought you
Yeah.
said it is not allowed.
it is allowed, but it's
Okay.
not used very.
I see,
Because what's,
every time I go up the
Yeah.
intersection, I see people turning
But
left.
with the signage, it wouldn't be allowed,
Right.
correct? And I mean,
Well,
the
but you
reason
need a
it
policy
shouldn't be
behind
allowed
it.
is because the eastbound traffic pulls all the way across that intersection and blocks that turn. It was meant not to be. I recall when it was resurfaced, and I think they striped it wrong and put a turn lane in, and there's a lot involved. Let me look into that as a separate issue
Right, because
with the
that's,
traffic safety committee and report back to Tim.
okay, yeah, I misunderstood. I thought you had said it was not allowed, and I was thinking, gosh, if somebody turned there, we don't have the sign, and there's liability and all kinds of stuff. If there was an
I mean,
accident.
it's a good point to bring up, and it's Chief Carvillis in the back, and I know the Traffic Safety Committee can take a look at that. But in general, is everybody else consensus on the design for Prairie and Ogden?
I have a consensus on the design of the turns. I did have a question, and we can put it for a future conversation, but just to note, we just did that AARP bike corridor audit, and sitting at the southeast corner there, there isn't a crosswalk, right, to go across, but there's also no signage telling you like how you should appropriately get across. And I don't know if it needs to wait for this project also, but basically that if you're going northbound on your bike or by foot on Prairie, you're like, how do I get over there? But you need to go this side, then this
You
side,
need to
then this
cross
side.
Prairie and then go from that corner
Right,
to that corner.
and I believe that was discussed at our last meeting, and then again, the question seems to come, do we need to wait till this is constructed? And, Mike, another one for the traffic, safety committee?
Chief's taking notes back there.
I don't see you
Yeah.
ready, Andy. Oh, you do.
Yeah, adding a crosswalk on the east leg is part of our design.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But you just would have to like, would it diagonal across? It still seems pretty not safe.
It's a little offset. and I mean,
It was
that's
off the
the-
corner, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah,
There
it
isn't
was-
one at all.
It was perpendicular, it was perpendicular to Ogden at the east end. Kind of where the stop bar is.
Okay.
So you would go from the southeast corner of Prairie and Ogden to the northwest corner of Prairie and Ogden?
No, the
No.
crosswalk would be east of the intersection, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now there's not a sidewalk, or there's not a curb cut, it's just a driveway.
Okay, oh, so right there, okay, okay.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, some directional help would be.
Yeah, I don't know if that
Important.
impacts the turns and the traffic there, but,
We would have to confirm, adding that crosswalk in would probably restrict right turns on red.
Is that allowable? It looks like it would end on the south end in that driveway. Can you end a crosswalk in a driveway?
That driveway's going away.
Yeah, that driveway's scheduled to be abandoned.
Oh, because, okay,
The one in Ogden, you mean?
yeah.
Well, that was a condition.
Soon as your development gets.
Yeah, let's have a little discussion about
Yeah.
that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Don't get Libby upset.
Trustee Hendricks. That dispensary does not look like it's going forward right now, unfortunately. But that was a condition of that special use, was to remove the driveway
With
on
permission of
Ogden
IDOT,
right
sure.
there. With that development seemingly stalled, that condition is, we're gonna be coming forward pretty soon with a special use extinguishment, that condition then goes away
Right, so that means that driveway's gonna stay there.
for the time being. Unless, with the next development that comes forward, you could always put that condition on that development.
All right. And so this same question then, can you end a crosswalk in a driveway? All right.
If that's the case, then it would have to be angled for it to cross.
I know the reason we required them to get rid of that driveway, we didn't think IDOT would approve it that close to the corner. It's better
absolutely.
operational. So if any new development comes in between now and this, we'll require them to close that driveway. And if there is no development by the time Ogden is constructed, then the project will close that driveway entrance off.
Do we need some kind of motion from the board in order to require that to be closed if it's not a special use? If it's just someone who's allowed by right, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little on a tangent here, but if that's allowed by right to be developed, does that need to be, do we need to do anything special to make sure that that's closed?
We're gonna have to leave it to the special use process when someone's coming in right now. If that's on property that's owned by somebody, and they have the driveway there, that's why we've conditioned on the special use.
But isn't it a little separate? I mean, we're doing a lot of, making a lot of changes on Ogden here. A lot of these are for safety, going forward. Isn't that what this is? We're not, I mean, they still have the entrance off of Prairie there. I mean, if this was a new project, we wouldn't allow that
I think
apron
you're
there.
vacating an unused drive. If that's still undeveloped and we're doing a project, we'd be vacating an unused driveway,
Right.
similar to what we do on our residential street projects.
And you close it off.
We close it off,
Yep.
and then again, the new development can come in and put a new driveway in, but we're saying that IDOT won't approve one in that location. But I would think you would be able to close that off if you're doing a roadway improvement.
Right.
That's common on our annual street improvement projects.
I think that issue will kind of sort itself out a little bit going forward. I mean, as Tim hinted, there might be some board action necessary about the extinguishment of the special use and then what might happen next. There has been in the past other interest in that property, maybe a similar use. So it's a good point to bring up, but I think that will sort itself out.
Okay.
But otherwise, again, is there a general consensus on the design? And these are, and I'm glad these things are coming up, and I know staff is too. I mean, these things that you can't look at these things in isolation. So when we're seeing traffic safety concerns, whether it's not part of this project, it's good to bring them up, because then the traffic safety committee or staff can deal with these as we go forward.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that what we're saying yes to here also would impact those crosswalk
Right.
issues.
Yeah, we'll be.
All right, so we're good with Prairie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. All right, last but not least?
And again, on Custer, if I recall, all three of the corners, all but southwest, are designed for the 40-foot truck turning movement. The southwest, the building's right up on the right-of-way, so in order to accommodate a 40-foot delivery vehicle, you'd have to tear a portion of that building down. So we were designing it for just a vehicle, a passenger vehicle, yeah. And again, that's what's using it now. I will say this, when we talk about these signalized intersections, when it's designed for a passenger vehicle, that's, if you're going eastbound on Ogden, making a right onto southbound Custer, per IDOT design requirements, that vehicle can't travel into the northbound Custer lanes. We know that Custer's not that heavily a traveled collector route, and then if a vehicle needed to get in there, they would wait till a time when they could use that. We don't have a bunch of signs of curb overtopping, so the design committee felt that it would be acceptable to leave that at the passenger car radius as opposed to impacting the existing building.
And similar concerns in consultation with Lions on their corner? I mean, have those topics come up, or?
We have not. We'll meet with Lions after, we want to see what Brookfield's doing on our corners, and then we'll go
Okay.
meet with Lions.
All right, any other questions, concerns on Custer? So there's a consensus with the concept as designed here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
Okay,
we'll move
thank
on
you.
to the sidewalk issue.
Yep, so, out there now, as you are probably aware, very narrow sidewalks. Here are some images. Especially at the signalized intersections where we have 5 lanes, the sidewalks are maybe 3 to 4 feet wide. The image on the right, in the background, you can kind of see the 2 legs walking away. They barely both fit on the sidewalk, so a lot of challenging obstacles out there. Signal posts are right in the middle, so our recommendation, we really want to maximize the parkway space with wider sidewalks. Right, 10-foot sidewalks where it's feasible. We want to incorporate the streetscape elements. When I say have the 10-foot sidewalks where feasible, we're not saying take down buildings to have the wider sidewalks. At those locations, we'd be narrowing down to what's out there now, 5 feet, 6 feet. And some of those parking spots that we discussed at Maple, that'd be something that we may be coming back or talking with the village on, our approach for some of those isolated conditions as well. This does require permanent right-of-way acquisition from about 44 parcels. Again, some of that is to clean up the right-of-way where the street is already on private property. Other areas, it's to widen that sidewalk so we can't have 10 feet within the public right-of-way. That 44 parcel count does not include any temporary construction easements that may be necessary to build or to provide proper cross slopes for the sidewalks to meet ADA accessibility guidelines. That's going to be determined later on during our design as we get into the detailed cross-section analysis. Just some images of where the sidewalks can't get any wider. Image on the left is at the car wash. The building is right up at the right-of-way. That's going to be one of the exceptions where, we're not going to be taking down the building just to widen the sidewalk. Image on the right is a ramp to get into one of the buildings. Again, you'd be, maintaining that width through there. But reconstructing the sidewalk. Again, this is just an illustration at Prairie. of, highlighting the blue line, which is the public right of way.
This is Maple, right?
Oh, at Maple, yeah, thank you. Highlighting the blue line is the existing right-of-way, the public right-of-way, and, the road itself is already encroaching onto private property, so, adding in the wider sidewalks, would require a strip of about 5 feet or so. At the corners themselves, it'd be a little bit larger clip, a triangle corner clip, but, it'd be about 5 to 10 feet of right-of-way acquisition per parcel. And then as you get further away from the intersections, the roadway narrows down to 4 feet, and we have about 10 to 12 feet of sidewalk on each side. So there'd be minimal right-of-way once you get beyond the intersections. Any questions, Derek, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so the reason, as Jim mentioned, that the sidewalks narrow down at the signalized intersections, because we're adding a turn lane. We just added 9 or 10 feet of pavement there, so we lose it in the sidewalk, okay? And the thought is, where we can, we're gonna go ahead and maintain those 10-foot sidewalks at these signalized intersections. We're not gonna be taking buildings down. We'll go to a reduced width sidewalk, and maybe what would help, Jim, is if we can send an email to Tim with the location, the summary of the locations where we're going, say less than 7 feet. IDOT requires 7 feet at the back of curbs, so we'll send you a list of parcels where we're going less than 7-foot sidewalk. I don't think there were too many, and I think the other thing is we can send a list of any properties where we're impacting parking. And I don't think that was that great. I think a lot of the widening that we did was in areas that are either grass areas, like we're taking some property, but we're not impacting the parking on those. But we can send you a summary of that we can forward to the board.
I have a question. On the sections where the width is smaller, like the picture you showed of the car wash, and those types of shorter sections, what's a typical plan for protecting the pedestrians in those where you actually don't really have a choice, you're much closer to the traffic? Is there like a railing, or is there something like that it's typically done in those spots?
No,
Or
it's
is that-
generally just providing the wider width.
Well, if you can't, though, is my
If you
point.
can't, yes, so.
I've not seen the you could put up a railing. I think it's just a pinch point in the sidewalk, but they're typically, like right now, can we go back to the car wash?
The car wash is probably the most egregious example.
Right, this is better just single file, kind of
Right.
walk down
Then
that if you needed
is a
to.
guardrail or a railing going to take up even more of the sidewalk?
Yeah.
It would narrow the, useful width of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's-
If the
I
curb
think
was
that's
higher,
fine.
it'd be less scary too.
Right. I'm thinking somebody like pushing a stroller and like,
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate both of your points, and Trustee Kaluzny, your point about the Maple intersection, like, let's try to be as creative and, if aggressive is the right word, as possible in trying to maintain the maximum width, even if that means losing a parking space on a private lot. Can we have that conversation with the business, and might they see the benefit to their business of people being able to safely walk in front of their establishment? This, we might not have any options here, but are there other instances where we're giving in and we're saying, well, we'll take it down to 6 feet, where we might have space for more if we think a little more creatively?
We'll put together a list of those. My recollection is there weren't that many of these,
Okay.
but I hear you, and we'll give you a definitive list of anywhere where it's going down to less than 7 feet.
Looks like a great spot for a
We'll look at
mural.
them individually.
it does, doesn't it?
I mean,
For a mural.
you could take the other option.
You could do one that
Take that-
creates some depth perception, makes you feel like you're not.
You're not about to die.
I mean, might they say, oh, we don't use that bay that often, and we would be, that seems unlikely, but.
We can certainly have discussions with them. I kind of agree with your sentiment of what I anticipate hearing, but we can certainly broach the subject with them.
Okay, because, in the packet, we have the anticipated right-of-way acquisition for all the properties by address and the amount, and the reasons and things like that for going forward. So again, I think the board's given a pretty good direction that we, would like to have the safest, widest sidewalks we can, knowing that there's certain, and I'm all open to asking the car wash if they're willing to part with that stall to make a wider sidewalk, but, that would be a tough decision for the board if they're not. But wherever possible, I think the direction they're giving you is overall, we support the consensus of widening the sidewalks and maybe even being a little bit more aggressive where we can, where if it would, even at the spots where it's 7 feet, 8 feet, what would we need to do to get to 10 feet in certain areas?
Sure.
So, does that clearly state the consensus of the board?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that's 3 out of 4?
Oh, this one's my favorite.
Save the
One more
best.
small issue to discuss.
Save the best for last?
Oh, what a great picture.
Right?
Yeah, so, our final issue to discuss is parking on or within the public right of way.
That doesn't happen in Ogden, does it?
So there's a lot of instances throughout the corridor where cars park in the right of way, overhang the right of way, encroach the right of way, like I mentioned before. Between 2018 and 2022, there were 5 crashes reported of vehicles backing onto Ogden, getting hit by a car traveling through. So, it's a very unsafe maneuver. We wanted to encourage compliant parking throughout the corridor. Here's a couple of images of instances that are non-compliant. As you can see here, cars parked overhanging the public right-of-way. It's highlighted in red where the edge of the sidewalk is. So if you are walking on the sidewalk, you are either bumping up against the bumper or going into the steeper part of the parkway where, again, if you're in a wheelchair or disabled, you're going to have a lot tougher time navigating through there. Here's an aerial shot of, again, some more cars parked overhanging the public right-of-way, needing to back up onto Ogden.
Are these Terry Schreiber's drone shots, the air ones?
Now, these were collected from Civiltech.
Okay.
Again, here's an image of a vehicle actually doing that backup maneuver. And more cars overhanging the right of way. And then in addition to that, in the background of the image on the left is a car parked on the sidewalk within the public right of way. There's a lot of vehicle tracks indicating continual parking within the sidewalks and the parkway. So now our approach for these non-compliant parking solutions. First, I want to touch on the village code. It says no vehicle may be parked, nor property owner maintain any parking lot or parking space to be occupied wherein any vehicle overhangs public right of way or public sidewalk. So we've observed through our parking counts on, it was a Thursday and a Saturday throughout the day, 26 non-compliant parking spaces to be removed. And I'm putting that in quotes because these aren't striped spaces, they are just parking on the parkway, non-compliant. In addition, there would be approximately 45 non-compliant parking spaces removed. I think that was total, right, Emma? Or is that the 45 of
Private.
parking on private property that would be impacted with our improvements. These are ones that overhang the Ogden right-of-way, use that as a backout lane, or they outlet too close to an intersection, and there are 2 locations of that. So our goals here for the parking issues on Ogden, we want to eliminate non-compliant parking on sidewalks. And we want to mitigate these impacts with nearby parking on the side streets by improving the angled parking on the side streets. Some of those solutions, we want to update the no parking ordinance along Ogden. I believe some of the ordinances are very old and may be dating back to when Ogden was a single lane or had a lot less traffic, but there's some blocks that have a no parking ordinance, some that do, and we kind of want to standardize that all along Ogden. We we want to we're evaluating additional side street parking as well, going block by block. We provided some tables with some parking data. And then if it's determined necessary, evaluate municipal lots in a separate study outside of this one.
Can I ask a question? Are the curbs along Ogden going to be high?
Yes.
So wouldn't that almost automatically eliminate the non-compliant?
It would
spaces?
discourage, although it would discourage people from driving up on the curb, it would not completely prohibit them. If they see a spot they may want to drive up on.
But and just to jump in, you distinguish between the 26 spaces that are non-compliant on basically village property. They're not true parking spaces
Correct.
to begin with. So there's the higher curbs. It's almost an enforcement issue going forward, but if there be higher curbs, they can't park there. But to trustee Naramatsu's point on the private parking spaces.
Accessing it would be more difficult. They'd have a big bump going over the curb, but they could, in theory, drive up on it.
It could come up a driveway and then park parallel on there, and I think you stated exactly correctly. It's an enforcement issue. If the village chose to, it doesn't meet your ordinance now, you can ticket them now, I believe.
Right.
And looking at some of the areas out there, it almost looks like they can park, or it's encouraged just because it's paved area. As we bring in the streetscape elements, having the brick pavers, it's not gonna look like you wanna park there.
Right.
But
Looking at lighting too.
To this picture here, and I know we've talked about the parking ordinances before, that certain areas have no parking, certain don't. I don't think this segment had no parking, but isn't that illegal right now anyhow? So it goes back to the enforcement in these areas, and whether it's, you can't park in this area or not because you're parking on a sidewalk.
And you're parking in the right of way. It said you can't even overhang the right of way. They're fully parked in the right of way, right?
And it's also just historic use. There'd have to be an education campaign and signage and things like this. Because I think what we're all realizing is, we could prevent this parking right now immediately on this, but I think.
This doesn't have to wait till 2029
Correct.
necessarily.
And that's part of this whole project, this whole process. We are, engaging the public early with many opportunities. When we go to our final public information meeting, we're gonna be inviting the corridor and then residents way beyond the corridor as well. Any property we have impacts to parking, access, right-of-way acquisition, they'll be getting a certified invitation in the mail to make sure that they received the invitation notifying them of impacts to their property. So all the business owners, we're not hiding this from them. We're, presenting it out there so we can get their comments, their inputs.
We could enforce this tomorrow. It would have this has been going on for decades. And in some cases, if we started enforcing this rigorously, the businesses may shut down. Because the whole parking they have on their site, it's not compliant, it shouldn't be allowed, but it would be a drastic change of how they operate their business. That's why our committee has spent a lot of time looking at these blocks, looking at this. Okay, so there will be a day, there will be a time, I believe, when the board will say, all right, it's done. Maybe it's not 2029, but if the board directs even before next year, if this is what you want to do, then we have to start an education campaign now, and we'll send notices out, and we'll start meeting with these individuals one-on-one, and Mike will be with me, police chief will be with me, but they will not be happy.
I was gonna say,
It will be very,
are the new parking additions, does that minimize some of the impacts, especially for some of the, mechanic shops and things that really need that space?
yeah, we're gonna get to that, and the good news is, most of these areas, there are some reasonable mitigation efforts that we can make to give reasonable parking alternatives. We're gonna get into that. There is one, maybe two, where there really are gonna be some challenging blocks. And there's no easy, we'll sit down with businesses and go through, there are some options for them. They're probably not gonna like them, but there are options. But there's a couple of really challenging blocks that we've spent a lot of time looking at.
but Trustee Naramata, you mentioned there's lots of car-oriented businesses on this corridor, and one thing we talked about within the subcommittee is some of this is not even customer parking, it's like car storage for their business that's happening on the public right-of-way. So they're relying on that to operate, but they're also blocking access for the public, so it's another factor to consider.
Offer one more thing. If the board has a desire to implement the no parking in the Ogden right-of-way, particularly this parallel parking, I do think in the parking study that there is some available angle parking that isn't always being used. So some of this may be a little bit for convenience in that they're parking in front of, right in front of a business, and there might be open angle parking. So that's, if the board chose to pursue that, we would look into that as an interim measure. We'd look into that in more detail.
Yeah, so this first table is a breakdown of the entire corridor, of the private non-compliant parking cost, the observed non-compliant parking within public right-of-way, as well as compliant parking added. So the red numbers are spaces that are being lost. Green numbers are spaces that are being added on the side streets with angled parking improvements. And rather than compare it corridor-wide, because it's split up north side, south side, because of the challenges crossing Ogden Avenue. We're going to step through and look at a couple of different segments. But overall, we're looking at, on the north side, 39 private non-compliant parking lost, 20 observed non-compliant parking within the private public right-of-way, and we're adding in 28. So that is 59 spaces lost. I put that in quotes again because some of those are illegal parking, and we're adding 28. On the south side, we are actually adding in more parking spaces than are being lost. So between East and Maple, there's really one segment right around Deo Avenue where is going to be very challenging, where we're having a tough time adding in more spots than is being lost. And here's some images of what's going on there now. Again, the cars overhanging the right-of-way, parking on the sidewalk. This is an image of that block from Deo to Raymond, showing, again, where they are parking and, what is being done. So on Deo Avenue, you can see the south side we are improving. However, those spots being lost are on the north. On the north side at Deo, the parking on the east side is already maximized. On the west side, we are adding, we're looking to relocate the fire hydrant so we can add in 1 or 2 parallel parking spaces. Over at Raymond, on the north side, the east leg is already improved. The west leg has a large driveway. So there's really no, within this block or 2 blocks, there's really no, we are already maximizing the parking opportunities there. So, that kind of then pushes it to the next block and the next block out.
I don't know if we want to pause. This is one of the areas where on the north side here, and it's a car repair business. I believe some of the angle parking is taken by cars that are being stored there, right? So our options are, if there was a lot of business that the village could purchase, you can put a municipal lot there. You can, a private property owner can look to purchase something. One of the options we discussed, and someone's done this, I think down by CarStar they had it, but if you buy one residential lot and they put in on the north side of the alley, and they put in 90-degree parking off of the alley, and they get 12 to 15 spots there. No easy solutions here, just a lot of car storage. Actually, I believe this business has a fenced-in car storage area to the west, so there just seem to be a lot of vehicles here.
Is the old Tony's restaurant
Yes.
still up for development,
Oh.
up for sale?
don't know.
There's nothing in it, right?
Correct.
So, potential,
It could be a
potential
parking-
lot,
It could be
municipal
a
lot.
potential target. for
It also
acquisition.
looks like this business has that parking behind it on the alley, on the north side of the alley.
And there is the possibility of, a former business becoming a parking lot, but we also have to consider what we want for the, I'm not saying it can't become but a parking lot, but prime frontage on Ogden Avenue becoming a parking lot
Yeah.
where there's a potential retail use or sales tax generating use or something else like that. Derek brought up the point of, north and south of the alleys adjacent to Ogden. Years ago, it was Brookfield Restaurant acquired the property north of the alley. It's now Tony's and put in a huge parking lot there to their business. Those are things that, private business owners might have to consider. The village could consider, providing municipal parking, but I think we want to be careful targeting frontage on Ogden Avenue for parking, just like we wouldn't want to, turn parts of Grand Boulevard frontage into parking. Prime lots, we might have to look at alternatives there, so.
Well, I think it warrants a conversation with the business owners. If you're adding spaces on the south side and it's safe to cross there at Raymond, because there's a pedestrian refuge, then maybe it's just fine.
They won't say that.
No, I know, and we actually use that business personally, so.
But this is one of them we looked at quite a bit, and part of it is, this is the way they've done things for years. And it sure looks like there's a lot of inoperable vehicles there. These aren't customer vehicles,
Yeah.
they're parked there. They have them in the lot, they have them behind, off the alley, so maybe it's rethinking how they're doing the business a little bit too.
Yep.
I do appreciate that you're trying, all the efforts that you're making to try and replace the parking that might be lost for some of these businesses. But I think it's pretty clear that this corridor is not going to change if we continue to allow that right-of-way parking. So for me, I fully and enthusiastically support getting rid of all the right-of-way parking.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. And I guess the consensus we're looking for, I think we have 3 areas we wanted to look at this, Car Star, and I think there's one down by Grove on the north side.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the next step is to go visit the property owner, and I think we have enough board consensus. We'll go explore options with them and then come back. I'm not sure that we're solving this at a board meeting tonight.
No, but I appreciate you coming forward, and I appreciate the board being very forthright with their consensus here. This is, we don't take these things lightly. We realize we could be impacting current businesses and the way they operate, but as Trustee Hendricks pointed out, it's like if we don't do anything, Ogden Avenue is going to stay the same. And every planning session we've had, every 30,000-foot view, we've always talked about Ogden Avenue has to change, things have to be different. And the slides that you started off with, it is absurd that people park on sidewalks on Ogden Avenue, and you think that, it wouldn't happen and you wouldn't have to put signs up and things, but people are trained to do that, they think it's acceptable, so the change is going to be difficult, but if this board doesn't do something about it, it's probably never going to get done, so.
And this is really good discussion, and if the board continues this direction, we will have these meetings with these business owners with the knowledge that the board has given us this direction, so we go there with that direction.
I go to some businesses in LaGrange, and they'll have a sign on the door that says, if you park in these spots outside, you're getting towed between these hours. Like, you can't go here. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so sorry.
Yeah, I think
I don't want a ticket.
a big part of the problem right now is the curb cuts, right? It's just like a massive curb cut, one after
Free
another, and like the curb doesn't exist anywhere, right? So, just that alone, as somebody mentioned earlier, I don't know if it's Trustee Naramatsu, that alone I think would help. Not that that there's not still legitimate concerns here, but that seems like the obvious first step that needs to be taken, and that's resulting in a lot of this behavior.
And we can be open to acquiring lots for village parking. I mean, that's something, and that would be a TIF-eligible expense, I guess, in a way. I mean, just by way of example, I mean, we're cutting a ribbon on it next week at for the parking lot at 31st and Park. If you're familiar there, the ice cream shop, people would park right on the sidewalk in front of the ice cream shop, and people would drop off patrons at the beauty shop and literally block the entire sidewalk because it was a flat. We did acquire that building. We have a parking lot there, and that's eliminated that problem. So, I mean, it can be done whether the village acquires property or but putting in the higher curbs, and we put grass in the Media Parkway, that was a very serious problem, because I observed it all the time, where cars would literally park on, the sidewalk, and then they'd back out onto 31st Street, after they get ice cream with kids in the car. So we've seen that work in other places. We can do that. But I think with staff, I think you guys have given a very clear consensus that there is support of the board, that while this is a big step, we support it. Now the next step is to go to the business owners, explain this is the trend, this is the direction we're going, and then see, there's going to be time to do this and implement this, but we got to start getting the word out. That fair? I mean, I think you've been very clear with your consensus, so it's helpful.
Okay. Move on to
Is
the,
there anything else?
I don't
I
know,
think,
was
move on
was
to
there
this
anything?
location. Can we look at the next
Sure,
one?
absolutely.
If it's a similar discussion, we can shorten the discussion, but.
Yeah, so this is Elman Park. Again, on the north side, very similar. Cars parking over in the right-of-way, and then they have a very narrow strip. Look at that bottom picture. This is standing on Ogden, looking north, that they kind of use for parking, which they drive up on the sidewalk, park next to their building. So again, it's a very challenging.
Yeah, that one's actually unique in the whole corridor. I think this is the only location we found this, where we use the parkway. This is public parking, but then they have a couple of driveways, and then they have there's a public sidewalk here, and they use this for parallel parking all along their frontage on the side street, and then there's a driveway exit onto Ogden, so they actually just then pull out, go onto Ogden, and we don't know how that's ever developed that way, but it's been that way for probably several iterations of business owners there. We also think that CarStar is a very nice business here, but to the point that's been made, we think a lot of these cars, there's several garage entrances, and our philosophy has been, well, we will maintain aprons and driveways to where they have a garage to let them access their service bays, but you might see from here and here, these are all just cars that are parked across the sidewalk, across the IDOT Parkway. That's what would be eliminated. So we're trying to be, accommodate business owners, and if they have a garage, allow them to access that garage space, but get rid of the parking. Enterprise rental car, there is no garage space here. This is all just parking. We don't know if that's customer parking or inventory for their rental cars. I believe it's Enterprise on the north side of the alley. They do own property just off the alley, and they've got a fair number of, that's probably where they keep their inventory, is just on the north side of the alley, which is a creative way to, and an effective way.
But allowing access to CarStar, and I mean, great business, but are you encourage them to then, is that going to be backing out into Ogden if they have access to pull into the, the service stalls? Is that then going to encourage backing out onto Ogden, or is there enough for them?
I was gonna ask that too, is there an entrance behind it where they could always just be heading forward on?
We need to meet individually. I think the next step, I don't know the answer to that, and
That would
that
be okay,
we
I
would
think.
need to meet individually with them to see if they had the garage door. I think, on the design committee, one of the members made a suggestion about operationally, maybe they can look where they reduce the amount of cars that they need there. But we're identifying how many spots that they use currently that would be lost with the Ogden improvement. And Jim, are we adding any on either of the side streets, east or west?
Yeah, On Park, we would be converting that driveway into that sidewalk area.
Right.
Into 2 additional spaces.
Just two, so.
Yeah, but the other 2 areas are built out.
Right, and if I remember right, they had the parking on the north side of the alley for just half the length of the alley, and we had talked about one option is to buy the residential lot on the other half of the alley and put that in. Again, there's expenses involved with all of
I
that.
think here, the block east, we may be adding a handful of spots too.
On Oak, I think, there's the,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think, I can't tell if, I'm looking at,
Adding 6 at Oak.
and is that on the east and west sides? Oh, because I'm trying to look at what page I'm on page, it's page 44 of our PDF, but it seems on Oak Avenue, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces on the west side of Oak, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on these. Are those existing or are those new?
It varies.
Okay.
It's a net gain of 6.
Okay, net gain of 6, that's helpful, okay.
But what they're gonna be losing, what that business of, right there, that's gonna, could you go back to the picture that shows the,
Cars on the sidewalk and then.
yeah, well, yeah, they're gonna lose all of this, which again is substandard, but what we're doing where we're adding these parking spaces on the right of way here is going to be going through their driveways that's how they get to these spots.
Right.
So we're eliminating that, eliminating this driveway here off of, right onto Ogden, and replacing it with 2 parking spaces on the side street.
I guess the consensus we're looking for from the board is, we're identifying, there's some significant impacts to a few of these properties. Seems like the board's pretty committed that we are gonna eliminate this head-in parking that is backing out onto Ogden, whether it crosses whether the parked cars are in the right-of-way or not, we're gonna eliminate that. And the next step for us then as the design team would be to go meet with these individual businesses and try to develop solutions. And I think we would be coming back to the board to give you an idea. Here's what we came up with, here's how the
That bottom left
discussion
picture,
went.
just you can count the problems, I mean, that car on the left is gonna have to back out onto Ogden Avenue. The car that's on the sidewalk is gonna have to come forward. And if picture someone walking down that sidewalk between the angled parking cars and then that car is trying to pull out onto Ogden Avenue and, make a left turn or right turn out of there. And then, if you look on the east side of Oak there's empty parking spaces. 2 or 3, 4, and so the cars that are parked on the sidewalk there could be parked in those spaces, so.
That's the point I was making. There are some underutilized angle parking. I think some of the parking is convenience.
Sure.
To park right in front of that, so.
And design is just so poor that it's encouraging people to do this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it looks like that's what you should be doing, right? Because there's the opening and from the side
Right.
street, and there's the opening onto Ogden, so.
And to be clear, IDOT wouldn't approve that driveway that close to an intersection. It's also part of the, right at the ADA ramp. Imagine if you're making a turn from the side street and someone pulls out of that driveway as you're making a turn onto Ogden. I mean, that just wouldn't be approved. That's not modern, doesn't meet modern design standards.
And the beauty of having these discussions now, as somebody has said on the board, we can give them 4 years, they're going to have to change their operations. And
Yeah.
it's not, they have time to do that, but they will have to come up with alternative solutions to this, instead of kind of commandeering the right-of-way for their own use. What we're saying is we're taking back the right-of-way for safe vehicular and pedestrian traffic. You're gonna have to, well, we may help solve some of these, and we will do our best, but in some cases, that may not be an option for the village.
Okay, for this business, can we just touch base? Grove should be a fairly quick discussion.
Yep, and this is out at on the corner, from Grove to Custer. The northeast corner of Grove is the liquor store, Phoenix Liquor, I believe. Again, they have the parking on the sidewalk. And then on Grove, they have, it is 90-degree parking on the east side of Grove, and we would be modifying that to angled parking, shifting from 90-degree to angled parking. You have more space, you need more space for angled parking, so you actually lose a space by going to angled as well.
They were adding angled on the west,
Adding
right?
angled on the
These
west
are all
side
big
as
net
well.
new spaces.
Yes.
Do you recall what the numbers are to what we lost and what we added on the west?
It's in that lots on the north side because there is existing parallel parking as well on that west side.
Mm-hmm.
So converting that west side to angled and the east side to angled would result in one loss.
Okay. So one lost space is what we're saying by eliminating, which again, seems acceptable.
And this is also right next to the Custer, or a block away from the Custer signal, where pedestrians could cross, park on the south side as well, where we are adding 2 spaces.
Did we find out about the lot next to Amco, or what it's called now? Is that their parking lot? The gravel lot?
Northwest corner of Custer?
Yes.
Yeah. Tim, did we find
We
out, or
started
Libby?
looking, I'm looking at Libya. Do we look at a no cash bid process for that? Custer and, I don't know.
I don't think we know who owns that.
'Cause, I mean, it seems the auto repair, I mean, there are tow trucks parked there, cars parked there. I mean, there's cars parked there regular. To my point that we're taking away some of what they have off of Ogden, but it sure seems like they have that whole lot next to them.
Mhm.
We'll verify that.
We wanted to mention this, but it seemed like a low impact, even if we're losing
Sure,
the
no, I
one spot.
appreciate you. I mean, again, I just, whether it's implied or I think there's a consensus from the board that on each of these, we realize there is going to be an impact. We're not, ignoring that or being cold about that, but I think the direction I'm getting from the board is that these things need to be done, changes that we're allowing time for this to be implemented, and I think the next step is for you to approach the most impacted ones first, basically, and, go forward from there, so.
That wraps everything up.
Any other overall questions, discussion, going back to anything?
No, I mean, my original intention was to open it up for public comment if there was any, but looking at the public, I seem to know everyone, and I think they've had their chance or will have their chance, but before we got to the next topic on the committee, I was gonna see if there was any business owners here or anyone else that wanted, because this obviously was published, put out there, there was notice of the meeting, the topic and everything else, so I was gonna open it up to audience comment, since the village board has had a chance to comment along the way, but
Can I go back to something you said right at the beginning, Derek, about adding a storm sewer?
Yes.
Is that, sorry, did you say that's being submitted?
It's being
As
studied,
Studied?
yes.
Okay.
See what
And-
kind of design challenges, impacts, costs, where it would be routed, but we're actively looking into adding a storm sewer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We do have, if we could, just 1 or 2 more slides,
Sure.
just next steps, and we could wrap up.
Yeah, so we're gonna start incorporating, the recommendations tonight into our design, and then essentially bring that to IDOT for their review, concurrence, approval, and incorporate all that into our draft report, project development report. The next quarter design committee meeting, we're gonna start to get into some of the more specific streetscape elements that would be out on the corridor. We do anticipate doing the business owner outreach in the spring, likely sooner as well, now that we have some direction on the parking and the impacts of it as well. And then, like I mentioned, we're anticipating phase 1 wrapping up next summer, possibly with our final public information meeting.
great.
So wrapping up the study, 26, going into design in 27. We'll see if that's a 2-year, 2.5-year design, but gives the board an idea of what the future of the project looks like.
questions about the next steps?
My only question is there a way to, would we consider ways to incentivize business owners to stop parking on the sidewalk sooner? If there were parking spaces or there were just unused vehicles, if there, in those different scenarios, is there a way to incentivize even before there's more parking available to them to consider their operations and stop parking on Ogden?
I'd like to get a little more information for staff and look at some of the, so they did do a parking utilization study. And I'd just like to look at the locations, for instance, if we've only got 2 or 3 cars on a sidewalk here and we know that we have 3+ spots available on angled parking, maybe let's look at what the real displacement is that we're looking at within the right-of-way. I will tell you, if you start eliminate the 90-degree parking that backs out into Ogden, that probably will wait to the project is my guess. That'd be a significant number of spots, but I'd like to, we can get back to you with some information.
But to your point, it should be a progressive approach, right? Where they get used to the idea that you can start, right, to what ultimately we'll be enforcing.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you to everyone involved. I know a lot of time, and I want to thank the committee for, they literally walked Ogden Avenue, which is pretty challenging. Combat pay there. Former trustee Cote, the current committee members, the staff members, our consultants. This is, again, these presentations, we've spent some time on this tonight, but the amount of time and effort that went in to get us to this point is tremendous. Derek and Hancock and everyone, so this was a very productive discussion. Appreciate the board being very clear with the consensus. It sends a strong message to staff that they can go to the business owners and say that, their board is unified behind this. We're gonna move forward in this direction, and we are understanding and giving time and everything else like this, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you got time for one more topic, everyone? All right, Derek, thank you so much, appreciate it. Is there anything else did you want to say anything else? I was trying to,
Get comfortable. It's cute.
I was trying to give you a break, you were talking so much there. I think Dan wanted to get up and tag you out. Okay, the last item we have up for discussion on the committee of the whole is discussion concerning demolition of village-acquired property at 3017 and 3723 Grand. We previously talked about demolishing these 2 properties. The board gave some desire to consider various options to demolition. Libby did a very detailed memo, but I'm going to turn it over to Libby Pop, our Community Development Director, to kind of summarize the results of getting the quotes and what the recommendations are.
Sure. Thank you, President Garvey. I'll try to keep it short. Back in April, we talked about doing the demolition and getting the site ready for future development, having it shovel-ready. Ideally, that would have happened by now. We ran into some financial constraints, so we had a little extra time to look into some of the other demolition options that the board also requested that we look into the deconstruction options. So between June and August, I've met with some of the other contractors to see what regular demolition would be and what deconstruction would be and the costs involved in that. And as you can see in the staff memo, there's 4 different ones that gave us quotes for it. We have KLF Enterprises, that's regular demolition. That would be for both buildings, $50,000 for 3717 Grand and $105 for 3723 for a total of $155. That includes salvaging a pallet of bricks and the sign that the board had requested. And that does include obtaining Cook County permits only and foundation removal. Then we have AG Coil Development. That's also regular demolition, and that's for both properties for $98,000. That's salvaging about 800 to 1,000 bricks and also recycling the sign as directed by the village. It does include both Cook County and village permits as well as foundation removal. Then we also received a quote from Recycling, which is also Reuse Depot. They work together. One does the deconstruction and one actually does part of the demo. That's for a total of $141,000, and that's salvaging some of the materials at both properties. And then the last one is rebuilding exchange. That's the last one that we received, also for deconstruction. They found that 3717 was not a property that they were looking to do the deconstruction compared to some of the lumber that they could salvage at 3723, which is the theater building. And that range was from 98 to 125,000. Foundation removal is not included in that one. So what I am looking for is direction on which direction the board would like to go with either demolition or deconstruction, and then we would go to a full bid process following that.
I just have, KLF says salvage 1 pallet of bricks and sign, and AG Coil says they'd salvage 800 to 1,000 bricks. How many bricks are in a pallet, just so?
That's my question.
Trustee Ketchmark?
So a pallet of bricks is about 400, a pallet is about 400 bricks.
Okay, thank you.
And then in the third one, the reuse depot, they said they would deconstruct it, but we wouldn't be able to keep any of the salvaged materials. They keep that for their own.
Right, so
Reuse, so it's-
recycling does, like, takes everything out, and then they donate it to Reuse Depot.
Right.
So for all the deconstruction, we don't keep any of it. It's basically donated. They're a 501c3.
So part of our discussion was using some of these bricks up at the shops for maybe some parts to the sign, to the pedestal sign. And I believe you said there's a pallet of bricks inside, that would be the paving bricks.
Right. We do have a full pallet of both bricks, actually, the
Okay.
pavers and the other ones.
Because the bricks on the building are building bricks. You wouldn't be making a sidewalk with those.
Kind of looking for direction here. I mean, the board did give direction to look at the various options for salvage and deconstruction and things. I mean, we do have to realize our financial responsibility here, that we are into property acquisition costs already, and we are into, we're still looking for proposals for development and things, so I know the board is considering cost and everything, so,
I'm okay with option 2.
Yep, I agree. I appreciate you looking into all of the options, just, curious to see what that looked like and what the quotes were and what they would be able to do with the bricks, but I agree with the financial piece, and if we wanted to keep 1,000 bricks and use them in a new development or use them from something else, that, it sounds like they would try to salvage those and not just like.
Right.
Right.
And
But-
the sign as well.
but I guess, just to be clear, I mean, these were, kind of just off-the-cuff quotes that Libby gathered. We still have to go through the formal bid
Bid process,
process. So we
correct.
can't just pick item 2. It's more kind of, are we going for, we're going to put out for bid for standard demolition?
Oh, I see.
And maybe AG Coil will come back with this bid, but it's not, I just want to be clear, it's not choosing item 2. But in general, are we looking at demolition versus deconstruction
Demolition while
demolition.
preserving as much as possible.
as much as
right?
possible? So,
Yeah, demolition
Yep.
with some salvage.
Correct.
everybody good with that? All right, thanks for all the footwork, and I appreciate the board. Again, it was worth the extra time to look into this, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Libby, thank you. All right, that ends the items we have up for discussion on the committee of the whole. I will once again open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment on the right side? Seeing none, any public comment on the left side? Is there any need for executive session tonight, Tim? Okay. At 9:06 PM, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by trustee Naramatsu, second by trustee Gahuli. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark.
Aye.
Trustee Whitehead.
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks.
Aye.
Trustee Narmatu.
Aye.
Trustee Gilhuli.
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're adjourned at 9:06 PM. Thank you, everybody.